Hey everybody, it's Stephanie here to explain the general adaptation syndrome, otherwise known as GAS. Hans Selye, Austrian endocrinologist and biologist, first proposed the general adaptation syndrome theory in 1936. He found a term for a common pattern response of physiological symptoms that we now call stress, and there are two kinds. Not all stress is a bad thing. Eustress is stress from positive situations, and distress is stress from negative situations. Here we have the baseline on the horizontal and the resistant distress on the vertical. We are in homeostasis until there is an alarm stimulus of new overload of stress entering the alarm phase. This phase begins with an initial decline, followed by an increase in the level of adaptation. The body's alarm to stimulus creates fatigue and muscle damage. The body responds with a distress signal sent to the brain to the hypothalamus to release hormones called glucocorticoids. Glucocorticoids trigger the release of stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. These give the person an increase in energy, increase in heart rate, increase in blood pressure. These physiological changes are controlled by the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, or your body's fight or flight response. In the resistance phase, your body counteracts the physiological changes that occurred in the alarm phase by activating the parasympathetic nervous system, decreasing cortisol, heart rate, and blood pressure. If an extended period of stress continues or overtrain, the body will continue to a state of exhaustion. In the exhaustion phase, we will see depleted energy sources, fatigue, depression, anxiety, injury, and stress-related health conditions by failing to recover properly. We can relate this to periodization and performance by considering our training or exercise as the stress stimulus. After the first two phases of the stressful situation ends, we see the benefits of training in the supercompensation phase. Musculoskeletal, neuromuscular, and metabolic adaptations have occurred, and a new plateau is reached as the body returns to a new level of homeostasis. You can now handle more stress or training with your new adaptations and start the triphasic cycle over again. As an athlete progresses to higher levels of adapted motor potential, the impulse must increase too. An athlete needs to balance the optimal training stimulus with appropriate unloading, fatigue managing recovery tactics that prevent falling into the overtraining phase or stress-induced injury due to the prolonged application of a stressor or a dose too high in magnitude. Now let's head to the track for application. Cunningham et al. Proposed 3 different loading frequencies in 2018 that we can apply to training for a race. The first runner training is Patty Plateau. She is not training as often as she should or at a high enough intensity with infrequent or insufficient loading. This results in stagnation or decline in Patty Plateau's level of adaptation or a plateau effect. The second runner is Olivia Overtrain. She is training very often and pushes herself too hard. The loading is too frequent or too high in magnitude to allow for recovery. As maladaptation and overtraining occurs, Olivia Overtrain's performance decreases. The last runner is Amanda Adaptation. She has been training at an appropriate frequency and intensity to elicit training adaptations for her body with adequate rest and recovery. Optimal loading has resulted in continual improvements in performance over time for Amanda Adaptation.